I've either been too young to be in the Senate because I wasn't 30 yet, and too old to stay as president. But I hope you know how grateful I am to all of you. I can honestly say, and I mean this from the bottom, give you my word as a Biden, I can honestly say I'm more optimistic about the future than I was when I was elected as a 29-year-old United States Senator. I mean it.
Well, Joe Biden has delivered an impassionate speech on stage on what should have been his day. In some ways, Joe Biden's keynote speech at the first day of the Democratic National Convention was about him, as he was honoured for his nearly 4 years in office and over 50-year political career. Officially passing the torch over to Vice President Kamala Harris, let's go through some of the top moments of the speech. The president copped a bit of backlash online for what was deemed an odd comment to say when he told the crowd that protesters outside had a point.
Finally deliver a ceasefire and end this war. Those protesters out in the street, they have a point. A lot of innocent people are being killed.
Both the Biden administration and Republicans have been scrutinised for their pro-Israel stance in the Hamas-Israel war. Because the Biden administration is obviously in power, its heavy funding and support of Israel has been met with protesting at campaign events. Outside the Democratic National Convention, pro-Palestinian protesters gathered, yelling at police.
Shame on you, pig! Our government is genocide! Shame on you, pig! Free Palestine! Do it before they come!
But was Joe Biden meant to say that protesters had a point?
Two bit of news here. You may not have been able to catch it from watching the speech. He ad-libbed two lines that I think made news. Number one, those protesters outside have a point. And then he went on to say on both sides, he ad-libbed that line. And then he said toward the end, he said, all that talk that I was angry to step down, it's not true. That was not in the prompter either.
Of course, there was some mumbling from Joe Biden as well.
You know, we have 1,000 billionaires in America. Women are not without electoral.
But Joe Biden was also accused of making false statements during his speech. One of them was his comments about his administration's handling of the immigration crisis at the US-Mexico border.
Then I had to take executive action. The result of the executive action I took, border encounters have dropped over 50%. In fact, there are fewer border crossings today than when Donald Trump left office.
Just to recap the facts on immigration numbers, when we compare the Trump administration to the Biden administration, the numbers of apprehensions have significantly increased. Under the Trump administration, 2018 saw nearly 397,000 apprehensions, and 2019 saw there was around 852,000. January 2021, when Joe Biden was sworn into office and Donald Trump moved out, the monthly apprehensions was about 78,000. The latest figures from July 2024 showed the numbers were about 104,000 apprehensions. The total number of apprehensions for 2021 under Joe Biden was over 1.7 million. 2022 was 2.3 million. 2023, 2.4 million. And 2024 has seen 1.9 million. Joe Biden didn't hold back when urging the audience to vote Kamala Harris in over Donald Trump. And the way he went after Trump, well, he brought up an old rumor.
The brave service members who gave their lives to this country, he called them suckers and losers. Who in the hell does he think he is? Who does he think he is?
The speculation was that in 2018, Donald Trump reportedly referred to American veterans as suckers and losers, an accusation that Trump still denies to this day.
But he said, I stood over graves of soldiers, and I said, these people are suckers and losers. Think dead soldiers from World War I. I said, this was a made-up deal from a magazine that's failing, Financial Disaster, by a guy that is a horrible radical left lunatic named Goldberg.
And in his passionate address, Joe Biden spoke about the administration's determination to act on climate change and the policies they've delivered on.
Creating hundreds of thousands of jobs in clean energy for American workers, including the IBEW installing 500,000 charging stations all across America.
The issue with this declaration of success is Joe Biden's comment on the supposed 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations built. In November 2021, the Biden administration committed an investment of $7.5 billion in building 500,000 stations by 2030. However, there's only been around 7 to 8 stations built, a far cry from the 50,000 needed to be built every year to make that target. Biden's Transport Minister, Pete Buttigieg, was questioned on this in May.
The Federal Highway Administration says only 7 or 8 charging stations have been produced with a $7.5 billion investment that taxpayers made back in 2021. Why isn't that happening more quickly?
So the president's goal is to have 500,000 chargers up by the end of this decade. Now, in order to do a charger, it's more than just plunking a small device into the ground. There's utility work, and this is also really a new category of federal investment. But we've been working with each of the 50 states. Every one of them is getting formula dollars to do this work, engaging them in the first handful, again, by 2030, 500,000 chargers. And the very first handful of chargers are now already being physically built.
While many would argue that Joe Biden's nearly 1-hour address was one of his best, social media users are still hard on the president. Joe Concha wrote, "This Biden speech is loud, angry, negative, devoid of anything resembling policy, and patently dishonest." And clearly his passionate address meant his voice grew louder. One person wrote, "He's yelling again, it's past his bedtime." Megyn Kelly tweeted, "That's it. I expected more in exchange for a presidential nomination." After Joe Biden wrapped up what could be one of his last presidential addresses, his team released an over 10-minute video documenting his career titled, "I Love You, America."
Wall Street didn't build the country. The middle class built the country.
He wakes up every day trying to make the lives of Americans better.
Because of his own personal experiences, Joe was able to empathize with somebody who has been through a terrible situation.
Today we're bringing home 3 American citizens and 1 American green card holder imprisoned unjustly in Russia.
President Biden's decision to withdraw as the Democratic nominee was one of the purest acts of patriotism I've seen in my life.
I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation.
I want to bring greetings from our incredible President Joe Biden.
It was the greatest honor of my life to sit behind that resolute desk to be President of the United States of America. But I care more about my country than I do about my remaining behind that desk.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.